Welcome back to another episode of Testing and Tech here on Vital MX.
TNT.
TNT?
I like that.
Ooh, TNT Network. That gives me like old wrestling names, honestly, from a kid. This is, again, the Testing and Tech podcast. That was my co-host, Stephen Tokarski, the product editor-at-large here at Vital MX. I'm your host, Michael Lindsay, the director of content, director of something. I'm not really sure
Our
these
fearless
days.
leader.
More like fearful leader.
The forum leader. The regulator.
Oh no. Bad nicknames are coming. As always, these shows are presented by our fine friends at Yamaha Motor USA. They are the title sponsor of this podcast. As always, we talk about it's a perfect fit having them title sponsor this podcast and give me and Stevie the opportunity to sit here and BS about bikes and all the testing and everything going on because of all the great things Yamaha is going on. The all-new 2026 YZ450F is out in the wild. We've got
Yes, it is.
Calmer, more stable, more predictable 450, an easier to ride YZ450, a quieter YZ450. Much quieter. A lot of good to talk about. All those bike reviews are out now. The initial ones between ourselves, between Swap, RacerX, Kiefer, MXA, dirt bike, all those I always promote. If you're looking at buying a new dirt bike, especially if you're looking at buying one of those new YZ450s, go check out everybody's content on it, not just ours. Go learn as much as you can about a motorcycle that you're going to go spend your hard-earned money on, because if you pick the one that sounds like it's going to work the best for you, you will have a more enjoyable riding experience, and that is a huge part of why we do this style content, isn't it, Stevie?
Yes, and I think some people are like, oh, they're sponsored by Yamaha, so they're just going to blow Yamaha all day, but I think we try to give it as real as possible to the people and not try to sugarcoat anything.
Yeah, Stevie worked for Yamaha for 8 years, and he immediately went into it on the the bike is really good, but you claimed out your things you wanted improved pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely.
And to be fair, pretty much every OEM advertises with Vital in some shape or form across the board. So that one, I actually had somebody accuse me that one year was like
Suzuki still.
Not currently, but it was funny because I remember that got brought up one year during shootout. Somebody commented on a forum or YouTube or something of like, oh, Yamaha won. Clearly they spend the most money with you, and this is probably a little more than I should say with my job. But I was like, no, and this is at the time. This is like 4 years ago. I'm like, yeah. Suzuki at the time was outspending every OEM by like 3 times on advertising. I'm like, so if I was doing what I was being accused of, I'm like, man, Suzuki would be winning shootouts left and right if I went where the money was. But no, that is not the case. This episode, we're going to try to cover 3 topics. However, sometimes we go a little long. So first topic Stevie brought up we want to talk about was what are some of the unique things that pros test that amateurs don't, or like kind of just the comparisons of where amateurs versus pros focus on their testing or what there is they try with the bikes. The second one is going to be something that's a bit current. We're talking about the 2026 YZ450 versus the 2026 Kawasaki KX450. Me and you have both rode those bikes particularly a lot back-to-back the last couple weeks. And then our third and final topic will be a little bit a home for Stevie here. I wanted to ask you about something to do with your time at Yamaha is basically like how an OEM takes in data and evaluates changes to bikes, how much of it is opinion-based versus how much of it is data-based and things of that nature. So I'll let you kick it off with our first topic today, sir.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting how some guys, and it's just get into testing. There's a lot of riders that become factory riders and they don't have any testing experience, or even through their career don't really test much. So I think it's where's the level of when you should start testing, and as an amateur, what options do you have? Because the factory, if you get on factory Honda or factory Cowie or something, you have unlimited options of what you can test pretty much. And just how...
Don't tell Jorge Prado that. Too soon?
Where did I hear...
too soon?
He was on like his 70th shock setting or something.
Would shock me.
But yeah, just getting into testing and trying more stuff and what's available for you as an amateur. Even as, like I say, a Team Green kid, they're pretty much... They have options, but I don't think they have anywhere close to the level of options that they get. And I think with testing, it's all about experience. You got to try stuff and go down some wrong roads and figure out how to learn how to feel a bike. So I just, for me, I was on Vance & Hines Yamaha, which was somewhat of like a factory amateur team. Mm-hmm. And we did minimal testing. We obviously had some engine packages and different exhaust and stuff like that. And we had factory connection suspension. So that's where I learned how to kind of understand my bike a little more and really start tinkering my bike, especially because my mechanic, Al Olson, had some time at factory Yamaha. He was Chad Reed's mechanic in Supercross in 2006. So he really had to mess with that bike a lot because if some people don't know, Chad Reed wouldn't even mess with clickers. If he wanted to change his suspension, he had to do internal valving change. So his suspension guy was probably really tired after a season.
I'm trying to think of some of the ones he's had. I knew one of them from L&M days. He's had Sergio. He's had a couple guys. I've always heard some.
Sergio. Yeah, I worked with him at Yamaha.
Oh, yeah, you did, right?
Yeah,
Sergio.
I really like
Sergio.
Yeah, I really like Sergio. And then, at Yamaha, had a chance to do some race team testing before they went to Star. Had a couple years with Barsha and Plessinger where we, just chased our tails a lot and got to do some stuff with RV. And it was really neat to understand and see the options available. Like pretty much there is unlimited options, but there isn't at the same time at a factory level. As you know, there's engineers and technicians that kind of have their idea of what they want and what they think should work on paper.
Yeah.
And then they might butt heads with the test rider or the factory rider who says, no, this doesn't work how it should work on the track. And then people start to, it's just a difficult of how to cater people. I think that's what Star has done a great job is they just will do any option to make their riders happy.
I think what I've, at least from my perspective, seen with factory teams, it's really interesting is there is like the unlimited options of you could try 10 different subframe heights if you wanted. You can try so many foot peg options. That's the thing that I feel like as a fan, you hear a rider talk about when they got to their first factory. Oh, I literally spent a day trying to figure out what foot peg position I want, what bar mount up position I want. I mean, you walk into factory Honda's still like this, but I remember walking into a factory Suzuki shop over in Yosh at one time and seeing this, and like say HRCs like this, and you'll see bar mount options down to like 0.5 millimeter increments, steering stems at 0.5 millimeter increment, all this stuff like that. So in one hand, yes, like race teams have this unique unlimited amount of options. I think from some of the rider ergo standpoints, like they'll make custom seats, they're only a couple millimeters different. So there's that kind of stuff where the possibilities are endless. But then, like I said, there are certain things, whether it's geometry with the bike, whether it's sort of a base position with the suspension, whether it's something to do with the engine package, there are options that people will never get to try, like in terms of mapping and just slight difference of pipes. But then there are times where there is a box still. Like there's a lot of options inside the box because I think that's where you get confused options. It's like you can make these tiny incremental changes at an insane rate, but you sometimes still can't get outside of those parameters that have been put in where Joe Blow, amateur kid that's got like good amateur sport that has maybe some good parents financial that can go to different engine guys. Like you could actually get, you may not be able to incrementally try as many options as a factory team. You may be given, hey, I can do 3 things for you, but they could be from this end of the scale to the absolute opposite end of the scale, which could be outside the parameters of what a factory team can do.
Yeah, I think with amateurs too, there's not as big of a budget for them, so they're not gonna. And some of these one-off parts that they're making for the factory teams, they're not gonna just do for a little B kid who's obviously still. It's not gonna make a difference for them. They're not searching for a tenth of a second a lap to try to win. They're dominating already, so they just give them a suspension package, an engine package, and they're good to go.
And I know, again, if you just get too far outside the window, eventually, and what I say by too far outside of where you need to be, this doesn't really work. But in most cases, some of the most successful things I've seen at a pro racing level is having an outside test rider like a Trey, like yourself, like somebody eval a ton of, at some point, I will say crap stuff.
Yeah, you sift through the shit. Yeah.
You come up with like an A, B, and C.
Yep.
A lot of pro go try them. Like whoever the guy on the team, here's 3 major options we've narrowed down to. Go try them, come back, pick an A, B, and C, and we'll try to tweak it from there versus letting the rider lead. And the reason I come down that conversation is I want to ask you your opinion of, from what you've seen, like, because I fall in this category, is, hey, you hear it like most riders at their top level aren't always great test riders, and not all of them, because I think like right now, like the amazing work that the HRC team has done with Hunter and Jen, I always hear a lot of that comes down to like Hunter being able to guide some of that stuff. But I lost my train of thought. Riders. If they're typically really good test riders, sometimes they don't make great rate. Like, I feel like riders, the better test rider they become, they sometimes become the worst.
Yeah, you can almost lead yourself down on the wrong road, and you're always trying to, kind of like Kenny, who's always trying to change his bike, and somewhat of a little bit of chase. They're just never satisfied. They're always looking for that. Instead of, I think you can get, for me, I think as a good mentality for a racer is, all right, let's get it 80, 90% of the way there, and then the rider's going to have to figure out, because you're never going to have a perfect bike that works perfect in every situation, at every track, especially in motocross and supercross, where the tracks are so much different, that they just need to get it very close in the ballpark and then kind of have some minimum adjustments from there, which having so many options can kind of give them give them a headache,
Well, two riders, I would exemplify that. And I mean, I wouldn't label the over testing side of either of these combinations as that bad, but just to give a little perspective is you take back to the Ricky and the James era. Like, Ricky is very much known and is very vocal about, you get a bike 78% of the way there and you figure it out. Not that James chased, but James would just go a direction with a bike in terms, really, and then stiff. Take maybe a little bit of a better example is take like an RV and a Dunge. And a great example, this comes down to, I think, a mentality that takes you past the bike is, I remember hearing, I can't remember if it was an interview or if it was in person talking to him, but a comment from Dungy was about when their 450 years, one of the years they went to Washougal, like Villo finally like laid it down Washougal, and he made a pass somewhere where Dungy basically commented, he's like, I would have never considered even trying. Dungy commented about never even trying that line, just kind of working. Again, he worked within a box that was comfortable, and RV was just like, kind of would make anything work, whether we're talking about line selection, whether we're talking about the bike, whether we're talking about the tires. Like, I remember Villo being really famous. One of the Dunlop guys commented to me at one point that he had ran the same tire for like 2 or 3 years straight. Like, no matter what race you went to, it was like, I know how that works.
Scoop tire for Tomac.
And that's good. Well, even before that, like, I remember same conversation talking to Dunlop guys like 2 years ago when, I think it was when Eli did the Achilles. You know, there was question marks about him coming back or not. Yep. And we were at Washougal for this Alpine Stars gear intro, and Eli, it was kind of Eli's first public appearance from doing the Achilles. He was super cool to chat with. I think I spent more time talking about his house and his kids than about anything at that point. And he went over and was talking to, I think it was Fleck from Dunlop, and was basically like, hey.
That guy can change a tire.
Oh, yes, he can. Because that's when they were moving from the factory, like more like 33 carcass into the 34, or like pattern, I guess you'd say. And there was a specific tire that Eli was like, is this tire still going to exist next year?
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be going away, that whatever the code of that tire was. And reflecting like, we'll have enough for you. If you're going to race next year, we'll make sure there's enough. But that was a big thing, because I remember asking him later, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, he's raced that tire for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't change. Like, front rear, that's what he runs, because that's what he knows. And he knows how it works on every surface, like no question marks. And then, it's interesting because I get it from the rider's perspective. Like, we see it with a little bit with Prado right now. Like, Prado is just completely convinced, right or wrong, what he's done. I do also get it. Like, he cannot perform on the bike and has convinced himself he can't perform on the bike. And it's just not going to happen at this point. And then some riders have to chase a setup versus some guys just mentally figure it out. And I don't know, when you look at a guy who can kind of put all that aside.
Kind of like Jet, he's said in his interviews before, the bike at the beginning of the moto, it was, I went wrong with the direction, and then he just kind of adjusts his riding. And then on the other side, you have Tomac, who, if the bike's not dialed for him, you see him maybe back in 7th or 8th place, and but he doesn't explain that to you.
Yeah. I think that's the neat one. Like, there's all types. There's the riders that will very much blame the bike setup. There's the riders that'll just say, hey, if I'm not comfortable, I can't go fast.
Yeah.
And then there are the riders that kind of can override the situation. And it's funny, I don't, sometimes age plays a part. And I feel like Eli was a little better at that earlier in his career. And I also think it's tough. We're weighing it towards the end of his career is like, hey, even the days he's not comfortable, like, again, you have somebody like Jed who's just maximizing all the time. I was listening to a comment even with Dazzy talking about the little differences. Even though Jen Hunter's bikes are so similar, it's down to just a tiny little thing here or there. That's why they every once in a while try each other's bikes. He talks a little about being how they each are as a rider and even a little bit how they are physically. Like Hunter can't, in some situations, cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? Not circumvent, but he can't make things work the way Jet. Basically, if the balance isn't right, Jet can work on move himself around a little more with his length and his style, where Hunter's more trapped in the center of the bike and just can't make it work.
What's crazy is they are really close in height too, but they don't look like it when they ride.
Hunter
Hunter looks like 6 inches shorter than Jet does.
Yeah, I would guess that Hunter's, without asking them, actually be a question. It's got to be like inseam and height, because I always joke about that. I'm just under 5. I'm like somewhere between 5'8" and 5'9", but I always joke about being short when I ride because I'm all torso. I have, I don't know, a 20 or 26 inseam, something stupid short. I have like the legs of somebody that's like 5'5", so I don't look tall on a bike. I look taller off a bike. And then you have somebody like Jet. Yeah, Jet and Hunter you see side by side, and you're like, oh, there's a small height difference, but on the bike they look a decent bit
much different.
What is something that, from what you've seen with team testing, that pros get really, like a factory level rider spends a ton of time trying that either an amateur or a low weekend warrior would not even think about or they wouldn't even consider?
I think they focus a lot on suspension, whereas amateurs get a setting and then they dial that in. More geometry stuff, maybe adding some material to the frame in situations, swing arm, wheelbase, foot peg position, subframes. I think stuff like that amateurs wouldn't even think about because it's just not an option to them,
Yeah. I think one of them, not that it's a big one, but riders being able to work on those guys being able to work on ergo things on the bike. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not changing bar mounts on the weekly, but the little things of like that they fall into of like, man, my boot catches here, on like a team basically making a custom part to pull a side panel in or push it out more, gap something in different, or hey, this gap to the seat to the side plate isn't great on a stock bike, and then making a little bit of custom foam on a cover that covers it to the point like passing by you wouldn't even notice, but if you really look at the bike, you're like, oh, they made this because that specific rider catches all the time on that part of the bike, or it's just something that nags at them, and they find little ways around that to meet the bike ergonomically better. Riders like, look at the Lawrences with the wing extenders.
Yeah, I think though, actually now that it came to me, is transmissions.
Yeah,
that's I think the biggest one, because just gearing ratio and stuff like that. No amateur guy is going to get, maybe if you're an AC or like a Ricky or something like that, when you're coming up, you might have the option of getting a factory transmission. But I think that's a big one when you get to that level of just having minimal changes too, of like, I just want second gear a little bit longer, or like, sometimes they're running 4 speeds and stuff like that.
Yeah. One that I think makes a fairly decent difference on the bike that, again, just like a consumer would read a review of one of us talking about a linkage and be like, oh, I'll go buy this Ride Engineering linkage. I'll go buy this Pro Circuit linkage or this Factory Connection linkage or this LXoN one. Yeah. And whether that's just the link arms or the full linkage, they just buy that and they know based off either a review or their own feeling, it does this to the curve. It makes a shock feel like this. It makes the bike balance feel like this. But that's the one option they buy. And it's like, okay, here's stock. Here's this aftermarket piece, and that's kind of it. But like, a great example. It's harder to tell sometimes with a factory team because they could have like 10 different, like Cowie's got link arms in 0.5 millimeter increments. So they have a 10 millimeter range, which is actually double to 20 when you go by the half increments, and then multiple bell cranks. But like walking by the Pro Circuit truck, that reminded me at SMX, because you had some guys on the team, we talked about in the last pod about like the linkages, like one of the guys on the team is on a full bone stock linkage. Yeah. One of the guys is on the Pro Circuit bell crank piece, but with a stock link arm. And then one of them was on a Pro Circuit bell crank, but with a factory Cowie link arm they borrowed. And then one of them was on PC arms, but like a stock rocker. And like those combinations, those actually can make a fairly big impact to how the rear end works. Like you think of how big of a difference like a stock linkage complete versus an aftermarket one, but then throw in a bunch of variables in the middle you could try. Like that's when I see teams sometimes spend so much time running through all those. Usually I feel like they run into a place where everybody agrees on something, but it is interesting when you see a team where nobody agrees.
Yeah, because I mean, every rider has their preference, and if they have so many options, but I think something some teams need to try more of is building a bike from stock and slowly, instead of just giving them all the bells and whistles. Like I remember Josh Grant was filling in for Factory Yamaha, and he was having some sensation with the bike. He goes, I've never felt this on a bike before. It just hits some bumps and just gets out of control. And so we went out to Kauai, and I was so pumped. It was like one of my first days riding the factory bike. And I was like a kid in a candy store, and I hopped on this thing. And I was like, this thing is not that good.
Yeah.
Like, and then we started taking off all the factory parts and putting more stock stuff on, and it just became better and better and better because of the time you spend in production testing, developing and making this bike as a whole. And then they just throw everything at it without slowly building it up. I think
there's that guiltiness of, oh, this clamp has worked with this linkage, even if there was a small production frame change that year, they throw the whole package. Like a great example of that is Roxon RCH gets there the first year. It was his RCH bike, but with full factory Suzuki parts. There was a lot of chassis components on it that were kind of part of the package. And he personally was on, like, man, this is not working for me. And a lot of people might remember this is that off season. So I think this is 2015 off season. He goes home to Germany to ride his old backyard track and ride a couple local tracks. I think he went home for 4 or 5 weeks, and he basically got a bone stock Suzuki 450 and rode it and came back and was like, that's better. Like, so they basically went to scratch. Okay, they went all the way back to a stock bike and built up, and that's when you see him racing next year. Oh, he's on stock clamps. Oh, he's on a different linkage. Oh, they didn't do this gusset. Oh, they didn't do this, but they kept this, and like.
Yeah, that happened at the OW test, like I talked about when we were getting the 23 factory or Japan bike ready for Tomac to test. Me, Chisholm, and TP, and had some star guys there. And we were like, the triple clamps were rigid and harsh, and we tried like their set of wheels versus stock wheels. And then a couple weeks later, we see Justin Cooper on stock triple clamps and standard wheels, and just like stuff like that, which was cool to see them implement that into their stuff and not just say, hey, we're getting sponsored by them, so we're going to run this stuff, and just satisfying the rider's need, which is really cool to see.
Well, the moral of the story for me on this one is simple. Not all the options in the world is always the best thing.
Yeah.
Unless you're willing to actually, but I say every option in the world is try everything stock, not try stuff in packages.
And there's just not enough time. These guys, they want to get in and get out, and they don't want to spend from sun up to sundown testing a bike 2 laps at a time, you know? So, and it takes a lot of time and effort and trial and error to figure these things out. And just as a racer, you don't have that time, you know?
One thing I'll say I'll take from this as advice to somebody is, let's say you get a bike and you slowly start building it. But let's say over the course of a year, you actually throw a decent amount of parts at this bike. Let's say you've put a clutch in. Let's say you've done triple clamps. You've had your suspension done, but maybe you've switched suspension companies mid-year or changed your setting quite a bit. You've thrown different wheels out. You've got stiffer rim on. You've just kept throwing stuff. And I've run into this where 8-9 months down the road, I'm like, I like my bike, but I don't know if I love my bike.
Yeah.
Like there's things I've known they're good, but I'm like, man, I also remember the first time I rode this bike bone stock, like I also liked things about it that might be missing is, hey, I know it sucks because you've probably spent the money and it probably hurts the wallet a little bit or the ego to think you have to do this, but I've done this a couple times where I've gone far enough down the road where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw some stock, like that. If I changed my suspension a lot, a bunch of stuff, like maybe I should try my stock wheels. Maybe I should try my stock clamps again. Maybe I should try, I have this other linkage. Maybe I should try it again because I've changed my shock setting or I've been changing my riding even in that time. Remembering like, hey, sometimes it's worth trying old stuff again and just kind of
sometimes they don't have that option, Michael. You know, they get rid of their stuff. Not everyone, or have another stock bike they could just try. You know,
I'm just saying, like, if a consumer bought clamps, they have them on the shelf, it's just a reminder to some guys, like, hey, I know you've spent the money. I know the bling's cool or this part's
It looks
cool.
good. That's the thing.
It looks great. I know you spent the money. Sometimes maybe take a second to go, yeah, maybe I'll try the stock part I have still sitting on the shelf again.
Yeah, that's what, for me in testing, I don't care about how it looks. Whatever performs and works best on track is what I'll run.
Purple and neon green.
Yeah, a little tiny bit. Obviously, you want a bike that looks sick, but
Hey, well, actually, before we move to our subject, one question for that is, have you ever caught yourself in a situation, and I will say I have, where I have tried something and I notice the difference, but maybe I don't appreciate how much better something is or worse something is until I honestly reval at the end and go back. Like,
oh yeah,
say you have 2 sets of clamps.
Yep.
You're on the first one. You try the second one, and the second one, whether it's better or worse, you think it's maybe 5% difference, and then you ride it for a bit, because I think we always talk about this. The first opinion is the best opinion. Maybe you ride it most of the day and you start to adapt to it, but then at the end you go, oh, I'm going to try the other part, and go back and you're like, whether good or bad, you're like, oh my God, that's actually that, like what I went back to is way worse, or what I went back to is way better. Like I didn't realize how big of a difference it was.
Oh yeah, I've had that a lot of times, especially in developing a bike so we always have comparison bikes at different manufacturers or the last year model, and we'll start in the morning, ride them all, and then, we'll start working on the new prototype or the new bike or whatever, and just continue. And, okay, we're making gains, and you're riding this bike all day, and you're like, oh, this thing's feeling really good. And at the end of the day, you hop back on the other bikes, and you're like, sometimes you're like, fuck, this thing isn't, we maybe made it, like, you think you did 25% gains when you really did 2%. And you're like, shit, this is not where I expected it to be, just because you've just adapted to it. You've been spending more time on it. And then, I know it's not an option for everyone or most people, but just when you back to back something is the best way possible of figuring out if it's good or worse. Yeah.
On to our next subject. This one actually hits off of something I saw on the forum. Is somebody started a topic saying, like, what's the most rideable 450 right now? And coming into before this year, like, my answer for the last 2 years has been pretty simple. The KX450 is very rideable. We give a crap about being a bit on the mellow side on the power and a bit on the soft side and this and that, but it makes it a very rideable, easy out of the box to get on 450. Maybe not always like the peak performance feels as high to some people as it should. Maybe it doesn't suit people in that way, but it's a very out of the box rideable motorcycle. We talked about the new YZ450 being very rideable. And like I said, me and you actually have spent a decent amount of time back and forth in those 2 bikes. We're actually going to do an individual feature on this. Well, you're wearing a Team USA hat. We're actually recording this right before I fly out for MXoN.
That's right, baby.
We'll see how it goes this weekend. So this episode comes out after MXoN. So me and him will either be very happy or very bummed. We're very patriotic. Actually, I should have you have a conversation with Lewis about that. Me and Lewis couldn't agree on MXoN about being he's just not patriotic about teams.
Well, he said he's just rooting for red, white, and blue, right? Because it's Great Britain.
It fits like 4 colors.
And USA.
That's better. The one time I joked about being like bummed when about the event in general. He was like, you don't like the event, you like the team. And I said, yes, I do. Like, I get more bummed when there's not a good team USA, because I'm very patriotic. Like, I get bummed out if we don't send a great team or we have people that bail or something. I still love the race.
I also love to see an underdog win, like some random team, like Italy a couple years ago when they won,
Even when, I was thinking about, it's been, I think, about a decade or coming up on a decade since Germany won. And Germany was great with has had some good teams, but still the year they won, they were very much an underdog team. But roundabout, anyways, we're going to do a very specific YZ versus Kawasaki test in the next week or two. But in the meantime, we both have ridden them on the same day. We've ridden them back-to-back days a bit. That comment, rideability, like where before the 26 batch bikes take all the 25s, customer walks up to you off the street and goes, what's the most rideable 450 like?
For sure the Cowie. Yeah. It's got really good comfort. Maybe it's a little on the soft side, but that's honestly, I would rather have a softer feeling bike that has more comfort than a stiff, harsh feeling bike. And then it just has the smoothest, easiest engine character for me. The KTM is really good as well, but it has more low end response and power feeling. But I just, especially on days where I don't feel as comfortable or the track's a little gnarly, like Fox Raceway lately, they've been ripping it really deep. there's been some good ruts when you're in those situations, and I just want a more manageable power feeling and an easier bike to ride. The Cowie is what I would go with. It has great ergos. It's very comfortable, pretty close. Honda's still the best for me, which they've been for years, but has just a very natural feeling. And I just hop on the Cowie, and I don't have any like just worry in me. I just know I can push on that thing, and it's always fun when you feel like you're getting the most out of a bike. You know, you're like, especially like that's why people love 125s. You can scream it and you feel like a hero on the bike. So I think, and I'd say 95% of people don't need 450 power. So I think, but everyone is a dick measuring contest, and oh yeah, I need that. It's slow, but when you're getting 10 minutes, and sure, if you're only riding for 3 laps and you're just looking for that adrenaline rush, maybe you do want the older YZ where it's just a fire-breathing dragon. But the Cowie is just easy to ride, does everything well. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything where it blows your head off, but it's just a very fun, manageable, easy to ride character for me.
Now, said consumer says to you, again, we're flashing back here. We're talking about like kind of 25s and 24s, more or less. Said guy looks at you and goes, well, hey, the YZ is known for really good comfort. Like, why wouldn't you recommend it as the rideable bike? Like, why would, if somebody walk up to you, because it has its redeeming qualities in terms of comfort, but why is that not? I guess explain to somebody, what is your definition of rideability? Like,
I think it's just, yes, if you're riding at a more higher level and you're pushing the YZ, maybe you get a little more comfort out of it. But for the overall general public and consumer who aren't a pro level speed or AMA pro rider, I think it's just, it works a little better. The YZ can be a little stiff for, say, a slower level rider. And then just the power is a little more difficult to control. It spools up really quickly mid to top. It's quick revving, and it's just a little more, it takes a little more energy and strength to ride the YZ versus the Cowie, where it's just a little more easier for me.
So now we're fast forwarding into the current conversation that me and you are having. We're getting ready to do this comparison. So you have the 26 KX450 is unchanged. So same feedback as 24, 25, and we've ridden it recently. And then we have the new YZ450, which again is a calmer chassis. It's a calmer engine. How much has that gap changed in that conversation of rideability between those two, like off your first couple impressions comparing them?
It's definitely close, because the YZ is much more manageable now. It's easier to ride, has a calmer, more comfort in the chassis, and the engine power is a little, I want to say, it's not weak, but it's definitely lost a little bit of its torque feeling and low to mid RPM response and power feeling. It's definitely closer, but I still think the Cowie has a little more easier to ride feel for me. It's just, I just hop on it, and I can't maybe go as fast as I can on the YZ, because when I really want to push on the YZ, I have a little more performance and power feeling. But if I'm just trying to cruise around the track at 80, 90%, I think it's just a little more manageable for me.
That's why I felt like we rode them the other day. Like I said, Paul has been ripping deep. Like in the bottom section of the Cowie is really fun when you're focusing on your roll speed and you're not attacking the corner. You're not attacking coming out. It flows really well. It's really manageable. The ergos are really good. It's a very comfortable bike to stand on. But then, so I jump on the YZ when I'm doing that, just a little bit off what I feel like is pushing my pace. I'm like, okay, the fork's a little stiffer on the YZ. The ergos aren't quite as perfect, so my standing positions don't feel as good. It doesn't feel as natural to do that stuff. But then you push, and it's like, great example was, there is two sections there today. Fox after the finish line, it's like 3 rollers up like a dragon's back, and you jump off the face of the first and the second one, double in that corner.
Yeah.
Cowie, full clanks on the forks, which loses control. So those moments like where you want to really push and elevate yourself, you're like, you kind of lose a little bit of like confidence in it a little bit. Like I ran into that, and then that dragon's back section, same thing. Like it was really cupped out the other day, and slapping the face of it, it would like I had more oh crap moments when I would push pace on the Cowie. But if I rode a 90, I was like, oh, I'm having a great freaking day right now. Where the Yamaha was a little bit the opposite of like, oh, when I'm cruising, it's not quite as comfortable in the Cowie. It's still, like I said, it's much more calmer than the old Yamaha. But then when you want to elevate, like it has a little bit more confidence inspiring. So I'm curious when we really back to back on what we hit is like, we try them in a bunch because me and you're going to take both and do a ton of different tracks really quick and do them both.
We don't have that many to ride out here.
Okay, I'm trying to make myself feel better about SoCal situation.
We're trying
right now.
Hopefully Elsinore opens soon, so we'll have our 4th or 5th track.
I can't believe I'm saying I literally live 7 minutes doorstep to gate at Elsinore. It's the first track I ever rode as a kid.
Yeah, I know.
I talk insane smack on how bad it's been at times, but I actually miss it so much right now.
Yeah.
Give me Milestone back to her. So actually, you know what? This is a whole no. I'm gonna get sidetracked on which track we missed the most. When I say aggressive, we'll do our regulars. We'll do our Fox. We'll do our GH. We'll do our Paris for a tight track.
Yep.
But it is interesting because
hopefully we'll get some rain too. Then we'll go to the hills. Then we have some other options.
No kidding. The Yamaha is interesting to me how much the power changed the rideability, but also like I could get where some people jump on and maybe miss the power, but it is still like how playful the Yamaha feels. Like I love the Cowie, but at times it feels like a tractor because the power is so mellow. Heavy. It just kind of flows around. Like I don't jump on the Cowie and feel ultra playful. Like I guess difference. If I go do like a 20-minute moto, Cowie's like really comfortable out of the box to just do that 85%. Where I'm going to do 3 sprint laps. The Yamaha is really fun because even though the power is a lot mellower, it's still so much more of a playful character that you could like. That little thing I was talking about where you're like in the Dragon's Back, anything where you're like bumping into stuff and then you gotta like Yamaha pops to life. It's got a little more hold up, so it springs off that stuff and it doesn't feel like it just slams into things. So like those little moments, you know, like I said, kind of pique the adrenaline. You're like, oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's still an exciting power character. Like even though it's mellowed out, I still think it's one of the strongest pulling bikes in the class. I think maybe Honda takes the cake for that now, torque feeling and stuff. We'll have to maybe do a comparison on that.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to ride,
we're gonna do our Hondas here in like 2 weeks. We were supposed to do it this week, but you and dual sport bikes, I don't know, man.
Speaking of that, dude, I broke the knuckle on that bike. I hit so hard. It literally chipped a piece out of the knuckle linkage.
Stevie hit a rock at like 50 miles an hour on a CR450L and cartwheeled his brains out.
Hoodie's like, I've never seen that. He's like, that you must have hit with some force.
Flat spot of front rim, destroyed a subframe, destroyed a rear fender, chipped a linkage, like knuckle off completely. That's
hardest crash I've had in probably 6 or 7 years. Yeah, I had a pretty good crash on something I can't talk about. At some place that I shouldn't be, where we were riding, and that was a good one too. That's probably the last time I had a really good hard hit.
So yes, the Cowie and Yamaha thing will be revisited. If anybody has any questions, that's what I'm curious about because we're going to do this feature. I really want to know from if you're considering those 2 bikes, what is it that you want to know about those 2 before we go do the test? Like that part, I'm really curious about. Yeah. So I'll also throw up a topic on the forum that we're going to do that test because I really want to know what people want to identify between those 2 bikes. So I do think, in general, like I said, the Honda is always highly considered. The Yamaha is always highly considered. The Cowie is a lot right now. Kind of weird because, like, I think Austrian bike guys just buy Austrian. Like, I don't get as many questions about if I should or shouldn't take one. I think guys are pretty sold on it or not. But those 3, I feel like the guys that are very hardcore Japanese bike, I have friends that literally rotate Honda, Cowie, and Yamahas like every every generation, like every 2 years, that kind of rotate those 3 for some reason. So that is a very common question or kind of like, hey, what should I pick or not?
Yeah, it kind of surprised me going like I rode the Yamaha for a few days and then we hopped on the Cowie and just kind of opened my eyes like, wow, this thing had really good comfort, was really easy to ride, like wasn't as weak as some people may say it is. I
still think it's slow.
It's a little slow, yes, but
you were joking about this is not a 350. I was one of the people who was like KX350.
No, because I rode that 350 versus the Cowie, and I'm like, there's no way. This thing has a very noticeable difference in power feeling. Yeah. I'll argue with that all day.
Because I think it's interesting, like I said, because I feel like prior to this generation, go back to 25s, like if you had a chart of like, comfort and peak performance, like Yamaha was really high on one end of the scale, and the Kawai's been really high in there, and they've kind of converged more due to the changes in Yamaha. So like where they kind of fit category wise has converged a bit more on the current one.
Yeah, I think it's cool that Yamaha's seen and heard the market complaints and from the shootouts and all of our reports that we send back to Japan, and making direct changes and targeting those areas where, instead of just kind of, sometimes they'll just go out on their own, like, well, hey, we need to focus on this part instead of this. And they really nailed the two main big complaints for the bike in the past couple of years.
So our third and final topic for this episode is basically, like me and you talked, this has kind of come up with our conversation of doing shootouts, is taking not only our opinion.
Don't give it away.
Don't give it away.
The secret.
And we figure this out quick. Nobody's going to do the same thing we're going to do. But the kind of like basically taking some of the cues from how you guys have done OEM testing, which some of that comes from the way you take your notes, the way you quantify a result on a certain area of the bike. And that's something I was super curious about is, you know, I've met, you know, Kiefer used to do back in the day, still does some OEM stuff. You, Preston, Travis, that was also different Travis, the one at Kawasaki that I know. Dudek, who's not me at Honda, but was that department. Like all these guys, like
Dubach,
talking about Dubach.
Legend.
Yep, the legend.
The human dyno.
Human dyno. Put him out, the man who's done more laps at GH than anybody.
Kiefer's catching up, though.
I feel like, well, the problem is Kiefer's going to leave, and then he will never.
I've been joking with him. He's there more in MXA now. I see MXA at other tracks, and
well, yeah, because Chris doesn't want to drive any farther down the hill. He just complains.
Peace and love, Chris.
I had to do some gear shoot the other day. I could not get him to go down to Fox Raceway to do a shoot. He had to do GH. But kind of that, like, of course, they have people like yourself and try to have a respectable opinion. They know, so they'll take your opinion, but how, for the most part, do you guys turn in information? How are decisions made? Like, how do you quantify it from more of a data perspective, or something where somebody can just sit down and look at it and be like, here's what the rider, you guys do reports and stuff. I can't imagine you're doing a great job of writing lately. But,
yeah, I love it.
I can't imagine you're writing novels all day test reports.
No, there's definitely a grading sheet or an evaluation sheet of how you, and I'm not going to go into super detail and give away exactly how they do it, but there's a big evaluation sheet that has, say, 50 to 70 different categories of the machine, and you'll score them based off your comparison bikes, your previous bikes, and there may be 2, 3, 4 different riders that do their whole sheet, and then there'll be one person that will take all those scores and figure out, okay, what's the average, or what's the real truth of it. Like, says maybe one guy is kind of off on scoring versus the other guys, and then there will be a final score for each category, and that's how everything is decided and developed, is through these evaluation sheets and scores of how they present it to the Japanese, and then from there they'll present it to the higher ups, who then decide how many bikes they want to buy and stuff like that through evaluation sheets. Because testing and riding is one thing, but it all comes down to how they can see it on paper, and how people who aren't testing and riding can understand why you're targeting this direction, or why you want to go this way, and what's good and what's bad.
So how would you guys quantify, say I think most of the ones I've heard of are on a scale 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. One of those two I've seen. Is a middle ground score, like a 2.5 or a 5, depending on that scale. What is a middle ground score? Like, is it just good enough? Is it like, what is a middle ground score? Is it literally like 1 is absolutely horrendous, like middle ground is okay, and 5 is where we hope to be, or 10 is where we hope to be? And also where we hope to be, is that like based off of as good as a production motorcycle could be, like knowing the limitations of a stock bike, or is that in the grand scheme of every wish on the face of the earth, like a 5 or a 10 is like the best thing?
Yeah, there's definitely, I know some manufacturers do 1 to 10, and then some do 1 to 5, and maybe 5 or 3 is like all 3s or 5s, or what is like your comparison bike, and you kind of judge it off that. And then say it's a 1 to 5 score, like you might only see a 5 if you're like going from a kickstart to an electric start.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, that's obviously a 5 because you don't have to kick it.
What I was saying is like,
And
do you
then
commonly run into people being like, when you guys use eval sheets, did you ever like be like, yep, this is the best it can be? Did that ever come up much, or is it
No.
you're always a bit below it?
Yeah. And then there's always a little discussion, maybe giving some or taking some back from what the engineers want. So say there's a chassis guy and say we score it, and there's different levels of development, right? There's you start with the first set, and then maybe 6 months later you ride the bike again, and then you always want to kind of give them homework to go back to Japan with and to work with. So if they come here and they nail everything on the first test and all the scores are really good, they're not going to really push to make much more improvement because they've already nailed all their targets, because there's a final target, obviously, that when we start a development of a bike, numbers and stuff of where you want to, okay, this is where we want to see this bike. These are a must, and then there's a want. So there's obviously, and if you hit all the must or wants in the first test, they're just going to go back and kick their feet up and not really do much. So sometimes you do score it a little bit lower than what it should be or could be just because you want to. And then sometimes you give them a bone on some stuff if, they're like, oh, hey, we need to make this and it's not possible to get it any better. So there's a lot of give and take, a lot of discussion and meetings of trying to help them out, trying to still push them and stuff like that.
What's a category, like you see the stuff we talk about currently media and the stuff that's evaluated when we're giving information to a consumer about suspension, about chassis, about power. What is a category or two that you guys focus on that doesn't get mentioned much publicly? Like it's something that's definitely a part of the bike, but maybe something that is either A, overlooked, or just doesn't pop, like a consumer notices it, but it's maybe not something that gets brought up a lot.
I think maybe response, which some people use in a different, is more of a power. There's power and response. Chassis rigidity balance, I think, is used a little bit, but not in the detail way of it. Handling, I think, like straight line stability, bump stability, and corner stability, like changing those and understanding the differences between those is a big one. And FI calibration, mapping, there's, stuff like that. I think it's just.
What about stuff like one of them we were talking about earlier, and I will say I'm guilty of it because it's not something that bothers me a lot, but like engine vibration or like feeling like quality of the bike. Like Chris is really big about talking about that. You talk about it. I'm a little, in a sense, numb to it. The only time I complain about vibration is jumping from a 4-stroke to a 2-stroke. It's not something, I definitely, if you ask me to identify between the bikes, I can tell you what's better, what worse, but it's not a factor that like I sit there and consider very heavily.
Yeah, some people say vibration. Some may say mechanical rough running, like how it runs it. And I think that's something that's not talked about a lot, but I think the Yamaha really does a great job of that, because like when that thing's at high RPM, like it is so smooth. You don't feel anything through your hands or through your feet in the foot pegs. Where the Cowie, you do feel a lot of that. So I think that's a big one that just goes kind of unnoticed, that people kind of maybe will explain it in vibration, but it's the YZ's really good with that. It's just a smooth, not smooth, but just you don't feel all of that inertia and stuff as much versus other bikes.
How tough is the eval portion of like the overall like ergonomics, not just speaking of the rider triangle and the bar bend, but even the way you connect to the bike, the side panels, the seat, the shape of those things, like how you interact with them, like how, because I imagine some of that stuff when you're in the middle of a bike, like has the plastic already been kind of tight at the very beginning? Do you have much leeway? Like how much can you guys talk? Like how much input can you give in those areas?
It's pretty set. Like in the beginning, they do, clay model checks where they have clay and you can come in and kind of But once you get going, there's not much change in it. They'll try to fix, like we talked about, the right hand or left hand side bolt on the YZ. That's an Allen.
The Stevie bolt, all your fault.
Yeah, they tried to not have that, and I just kept clipping my boot on it, and so they had to put that there to keep it from folding out. But yeah, once you get down to a certain, and it's all timing too. You know, you can't, like we talked with TP. Just there's only a certain amount of time. There's deadlines you have to hit. So they try to hit it pretty good in the beginning parts, in the beginning stages. But if there is a big problem, they will address it and move and try to fix that going forward.
What's something else like that comes up during eval that's just like maybe out of frame, out of mind for people, or even something that's come up from it that you think particularly helps you now with like doing this side of the job? Whether it's the way you guys do reports, whether it's the way you quantify it, like what's something you take from that that's really helping you with the transition to the media side?
That's a tough one, Michael. I'm drawing a blank. There's so many different options and ideas, and shit. I think cornering, performance, traction, feeling, just chassis stability. Yeah, I don't know. You got me on that one right now. I'm drawing a blank.
Next one. How important do you feel like it is for the development process or testing process it is to always have, and this is a tough one. I wish we do more often media, and somebody could say it's as simple as buying a bike, but I think it's a little easier in your guys' world because you're doing one bike at a time. It's easy to have either your prior model or have your target model you're up against, whether it maybe is a compare bike, but being able to literally back-to-back machines versus, I feel like I do a good, honest job personally of like, hey, I have good memory of what I've ridden and what it feels like, but at the end of the day, I'm still also sometimes going off a 6-month-old memory or an 8-month-old memory of like, and feeling of what something's done versus day of being able to back-to-back something.
Yeah, there's no comparison. It's kind of blind testing, you know, of parts where you haven't tried it before, but you can also just hop on another machine right then and go see, okay, how much is it different versus, oh yeah, you know, that felt good at Glen Helen 6 months ago, and now I'm at Paula, and this is a difference. I think that's a huge misunderstanding and difference from production testing to the media stuff we do. That's why I like to try to bring other bikes or older model bikes to these comparisons, or if we're doing a product, to throw it back on and go back to back just so you can clearly feel the difference, because there's no better way of understanding and feeling that unless you go back to back. And I think that's a big part of production, is you always have that option of trying the older model, trying a different bike, even going back to that different part. There's some times where you can't, say we're making a big primary change or something transmission wise, where it may take an hour and a half for the guys to do it. You make that change and you either decide, okay, this is the direction, or sometimes you're not going to go back and waste another 2 hours trying to figure out, oh, you know, I don't know. Like, that's why you have multiple guys. So if there's 3 guys and 2 guys decide, yep, this is better, this is the direction, and one guy's like, I don't know, maybe I want to go back, but there's not enough time. They're just like, all right, well, you know, we got to move on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode. As always, if people have any thoughts, anything they'd like to have us talk about or like to see us evaluate or compare, please throw them in the comments section below. If you're on YouTube, if you listen to this podcast on one of your audios, like your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, etc., you can always go to Vital MX. You can sign up for an account and post on the forum. Attention ML, attention
Put your
Stevie.
Bikes on there.
Put your bikes for bike of the day. Yeah, Stevie does bike of the day now. Please go add some bikes to the bike check section.
Yes.
You want to have Stevie feature it, and then if your bike doesn't get featured, you can go find Stevie on Instagram, DM him, and tell him he's an idiot.
Or find me at the track and take me out.
That too.
Yes, I would love it.
Stevie wants.
I always love a little aggressive riding.
Stevie wants conflict.
Yeah.
Stevie woke up on a certain side of the bed
Good
today.
conflict.
Conflict.
Good conflict.
Good conflict. You just miss having TP around. That's what it is. You miss your conflict.
Well,
with
he's
Travis
slowed down in his older age, so I need some more competition now. He
You need to
used to
start
have
fresh.
He used to have more speed. It was more of a
That's what I
closer
told-
gap.
See, I told Stevie the other day he needs to find himself like a Grom at the track, maybe a kid just getting on big bikes or something that can help him with some testing and maybe will help with some bikes racing.
I'm working on it.
And I thought in the back of my head, the fun part was maybe if this kid gets fast enough, it'll piss Stevie off. And then Stevie will either go faster or clean out the kid. And then it's just pure chaos entertainment for me.
No, I try. I'm getting too old to have that competitive spirit. But I mean,
Shit.
I'm not getting too old. I'm trying to mellow out.
Do you want me to requote the KX450 tester from the other day?
No, that's, well, there's some people I just can't fathom them being faster than me. So I got to.
Chris or Travis or
Travis.
Josh, you're just like, nope, I'm going faster.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, honestly, I'll give it to him. We're on his little turn tracks in the hills. He can ride really well. It pisses me off.
Hey, you've probably experienced this with him. It is hilarious. This is always one of the funnest things about
But
the
he has
winter,
no full send left in him.
But I do love going in the winter with him because Chris is like riding out his house is kind of a funny thing you'll do. So you'll ride out of his place and you'll ride to the first track, like we'll warm up.
Yeah.
And you don't spend very long at each track. You'll go do like some laps, a little moto, maybe somebody gets out a stopwatch or gets all into a bitchy lap time thing. We'll do one track. It's like, okay, let's move to this track and then move to this track and then move to this track. And you'll go through 4 or 5 through the day. You don't just sit at one hill track all day. I watched him go to a track where like Aiden is faster than him. And then he will move. I think he purposely tries to find a track he knows Aiden will send himself into the ground.
Yeah.
Because I witnessed switch tracks and then they're even. And then switch tracks and Chris is better. And then Aiden will try to beat a lap time or try to send it. And then Aiden ends up on the ground. And then you have the typical dad being like, ha ha. I've witnessed that before and that makes my day.
He also knows how to really lay out a track. Mm-hmm. Like I've been with him a couple times where he just makes a very cool flowing. Like some people just don't have it, and like it just doesn't flow. And he's been doing it for years out there, and he does a really great job. That's one of my funnest stuff to do is go ride out there in the hills.
Oh, what's his buddy's name that wears like the garden gloves that just shreds on that stuff?
Jimmy Pardue.
Jimmy's awesome.
Jimmy is a stud.
I'd heard stories about Jimmy. I met Jimmy off the bike one time, and then I actually saw him ride. Dude shreds, like wearing Levi's and a mid-smash jersey.
Not
Dickies.
Levi's.
Just sends it. So dude is amazing on that stuff.
We do all the US like GYTR parts. We do all the durability with like the testing guys. Yeah. And we'll bring in other riders. So say we're doing like a clutch or whatever, or the 250F engine package. We'll do, which I really, it makes me want to buy GYTR stuff, seeing how much time and durability they put into it. Yeah. And so like we'll have 6 guys and we'll ride 4 straight days from the second the track opens, or we'll rent a track. Yeah. And each guy will go out and do 30 minutes. They'll come in, fill it up with gas, and the next guy's back out there, and this bike is just running all day. So Jimmy will come out, and there's been a couple times where it's been like 102 degrees and we're just all smoked, and he's out there doing 45-minute motos. Yeah. He'll do 4 of them out the day. And if you see this guy, you're like, this guy cannot ride. And he goes out there and rips. And he has such good roll speed in his corner, I think, from all the trail riding out in the hills. And then he'll hammer his own bike. Yeah. Like, he'll come to the track, and me and TP will see it. And, like, his grips are down to, like, the plastic on the throttle tube. And Travis will be like, hey, here's some grip. No, Trav, it's okay, man. I'm good. You sure? Like, and he's like, dude, he's like, Jimmy, you shouldn't be riding your bike like this. And he's just out there hammering. Yeah.
I ran
he's awesome.
One of the days we ran into him while we were switching tracks, and I love it. He comes up, Chris goes, oh, Chris, you know that track you made over there? He's like, yeah. He goes, I rode it backwards. It flows so good that way. And Chris will look and go, really? Like, and he's like, oh, it's so much fun. I'm sorry if I blew out any corners. He's just always so, I just like the way he's like, oh, it's really good though. I'm going to go ride this one. He'll just wander off, and that dude is out there all day.
He is the nicest guy though. Yeah, one of the sweetest dude ever. So.
Such a cool dude. But yeah, so yeah, yell at Stevie for bike of the days if you want. If
Yeah,
you want yours
put 'em
picked.
on there.
Throw them in the comment sections. Throw them on the forum. Whatever. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast presented by our friends again at Yamaha Motor USA. We're deep into bike testing season. I'm on a flight tonight to Ironman. Go Team USA.
Jealous.
I know USA. There's nothing like a motocross of
No,
nations. But
there's no other race that's always been. I think I fell in love with it when it was Pastrana, Hughes, and
Ricky and Renee in 2000.
Yeah, and Pastrana jumped down that hill.
Yep.
And there's just no other race like it. It's such a different environment. What's your topic? Let's not stop this real quick. But do you think the Europe ones are crazier than?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
than even Redbud. Like
Redbud's really good for a US one because, like, I went to Bud's originally. It was pretty decent. I went to Colorado, Denver, and what was that, 2010? That was pretty mellow for an MXoN. It was still cool, but just only so much space at that track. Redbud is the closest to the Europe ones, but, I mean, the ones in France and Italy are completely off the charts in terms of, again, kind of arguing point. Lewis was, like, joking about U.S. fans, like, not joking, but just question, like, U.S. fans being so patriotic. I mean, dude, German fans, French fans, Italy, all of them with their chainsaws and the full face paint. It is so cool to go to one that is like deep in like almost corners of like all the German fans are one corner. Every time you hear Kenny go by, you can just hear that area of the track light up. And then the French fans are all one area. And it's what you see of motorsports in Europe in general, like how big F1 races are, how big MotoGP races can be. And it's cool. It does make me, it's part of like when you go to the nationals in the US, Redbud, Dilla's actually pretty good. Dilla's similar to this, but like Redbud has such an atmosphere. And that's everybody talks about it. And it is because you kind of go to, no offense, you go to Fox Raceway and there's no atmosphere for the race.
Yeah. Well, there's a bro atmosphere.
Bro.
The 9 Bro Niners.
Not 9, but.
Give me your predictions real quick.
Oh,
so
God,
if we nail podium, 1, 2, 3.
Podium is going to be, I mean, again, I'm a USA guy to the death. I'll go USA actually pulls this off. Australia gets second and Belgium gets third.
Kind of took mine.
You did it?
I think I'm going to.
Belgium requires Sasha Kunin to stay off the ground all weekend.
I'm going to go. I want USA to win, but I think it's going to be Australia, USA, Belgium.
And if it's not Belgium on the podium, it would be Italy and France are both really good, but Fevre kind of sounds like he's burnt on the year a little bit. I don't know how much he's going to push.
Big Lou is saying he's not even going to try it here.
He made some comment in an interview somewhere about just not being like, he's not, the focus isn't there. But now the MXGP title's not, maybe you can turn that around. I'm trying to think, missing one team that I think could be a really good podium. Dark horse, I will say I don't completely count out Germany just because Kenny's not as prepared as he was a couple years ago, but like, you also have the current MX2 champion is Simone Langenfelder, but Simone's also never done good at that race. Yeah. So I think Lou said, I don't know if I think he's only top 10 in one moto ever.
Really?
But very different year for Simone, so that could change. Of course, I feel like such an idiot. If it's not Belgium, it's probably the Netherlands. De Wolf wants to prove being the best MX2 guy in the world right now. Calvin Vlanderens had a pretty solid year, and then it might be the last like big professional race of Koldenhoff's career. And Glenn has always, not always, but Glenn usually performs at at destinations. Yeah. I think it's a big race for him where it might be kind of one of the last big world stage races he does. So I think Glenn will really put himself out there in a sense.
I heard he's coming here next year. He wants to come here.
He wants to, but the team he was talking to, I don't think has space for him now, or they're not going forward with that plan. Yeah. I know he is still pushing to come here, but I just don't know where the spot is as of right now. I hope it works out for him. Love to see him here. But yeah, I kind of lean towards a Netherlands or Belgium for the podium as well. But anyways, that's the end of this episode.
Maybe we'll be geniuses here soon.
Yeah, I'll probably, knowing me,
there's always some.
In retrospect, I'm always very wrong.
I want to hear Lou's predictions.
I mean, he's saying his is US and Australia for the top. I think he's moved towards Australia's, or I think he's evened out a little. No, he's moved more towards Australia being the favorite with the team changes.
I just see if Webster gets one good podium or one good
Yeah.
moto.
Well, somebody said, I think it's like over 50% of the time, the MX2 worst scores the drop score for any country, which makes sense.
And Hunter went 8.4 last year, which I don't think he's going to do this year.
No, he's going to be, but not, he's riding
be,
better than ever.
Yeah.
We actually talked about that in a recent episode. One of our last post-race shows, me and Lewis were talking about, man, just, I don't know if Hunter gets enough props for how good he has rode this year in general. And I think that could be a huge part of it being on the world stage. We'll see. Like I'd have to look over the whole list, but I would think he is the favorite for the open category race, which against the 250. So like race 2.
What if Joe comes out and just beats him?
Be great for Joe, especially for that contract. Finishing up that details. Race, I think it's because race 2 is MX2 versus MX3.
Yep.
Or open now, as they call it. That could be that race could be a Hunter overall win.
Yeah.
That could very much be a Hunter overall win race right there. Joe will be really good in that race. There's some other really big hitters in that one. There's also just the fun details to watch. Like it's Tim Geiser's last race on a Honda. Of course, Slovenia is never. Tim's still kind of recovering from injuries this year, so I would say Tim's maybe on paper not as good as he was last year when he beat Chet. But still, it's his last race Honda. He'll push. That'll be a really good individual race. How frustrating is that got to be
for him just to never have, like, can he make some fake passports for a couple guys that are good?
Just, Pancar tries best in those guys, but it's just one of those situations. Like, it's interesting. Italy finally got done because I was, and Italy has had stronger teams by far than Slovenia could ever hope to have, but still, Caroli had been in that position at one point where it was like, man, you can be the best in the world.
I think they might be sleepers for a podium, Italy.
Yeah, no, they legitimately are. Boncorsi has rode fantastic this year.
I think he'll be better. Caroli's pretty good.
Yep, and then Adamo really brought it back around towards the latter part of MX2 this year, so Adamo's really good. So they're definitely a dark horse for a podium as well. They could very much surprise. It just always comes down to everybody's going to have some terrible drop score. Who's going to be able to manage the next one? Because I think, what did Australia win on last year? A mid-20s?
24 or something.
24,
I think 26. It was
that's one
of the highest ones.
One of the highest ones, yeah. So, anyways, that's it for this episode. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, you like. I would think if you're listening to this audio platform, you're probably already subscribed. But if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And we'll be back with more.
Yep. See you at the track. Thank you.